Hello and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. I'm just going to push on with some instructor training suggestions and recommendations. My last little chat was on teaching kata, what to look for, and the three different stages that I go through when I'm teaching kata. So I thought I'd push on to Kumite. Now, Kumite is a whole different kettle of fish, if you like. It's one of the three legs that we use for karate training. We do Kion, Kata, and Kumite. Kion, of course, being basics. Kata being movement, emotion, symbolic battle against imaginary enemies, if you like. It's also extremely useful as a form of shadow boxing, if you will, or imaginary situations where you'd use that particular technique. It should flow from one movement to the other. You bring together your breathing, your basic stances, basic techniques in different situations that are purely mythical. However, Kumite is a little bit different. Kumite is probably truly non-stylistic. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're teaching basics, there's certain stances that are unique to each style, like Kokutsudachi back stance is unique to Shotokan. Most other styles use Nekoashidachi, or short stances. Sanshin Dachi, used a lot in Goju-ryu, not so much, but to a certain extent in Shotokan. And different techniques that we'd see in other stances, in other styles rather, that we won't see in their affiliate styles, if you like Shito-ryu, Goju-ryu, Shotokan, Uechi-ryu. They all have little individual stances and techniques that are unique to them. However, Kumite is a little different. In Kumite, we all tend to use the same techniques. Now, how you use them depends on the individual and his level of skill. So when you're first starting off in Kumite, for instance, if you've got a beginner that came into the club, and don't do this, by the way, but maybe do it as an experiment and you can find out for yourself. So the first night you got a beginner's class, and if you said to them all, okay, pair up, we're going to do a little sparring, there would be absolutely no method to it. There would be no uniformity or style to it. It would look a little bit like mayhem. You might get the occasional guy that wants to go after the other guy. Mostly you get them all backing off and trying to knock techniques out the way. You get lousy kicks. In other words, they just wouldn't know what they were doing. So you need to instill the basics first. Once they've got the basics, then applying them against an opponent is a whole different ball game. So Kumite is just another way of training, but you bring a lot more variables into it when you put somebody in front of a partner. The big obvious change is the psychological one, where you're standing in front of somebody and even if they tell you they're going to punch you in the mouth, it's still going to take a little bit of skill to stop them doing that. And, hopefully your basics will kick in. So there are some styles that don't teach blocking at all, or they don't concentrate on blocking at all. It's all attack. These are usually the free fighting styles, like the World Kickboxing Organization or something like that, mainly go in for offense and not defense. And you're going to find that their objective is all attack. I wouldn't say they blocked as such, but they do form a guard or a defensive position, much the same as in boxing. A boxer will not really block as such, but he will adopt a defensive position, whereas his opponent's attacks have a little bit more difficult to get through, and his punches have a little less effect because they're hitting on the arms and not to his target, the head or stomach or whatever. So what I want to do is just go through Kumite as a form of training. So when you introduce Kumite, hopefully you have given the student a good background in basics, how to correctly punch to target, which weapon to use, suken or shuto or whatever they're going to use, taisho, anything. Most forms of basic Kumite only involve punches, and usually just punches off the back leg, like stepping punch, oisuki. Some tend to use a reverse punch, gyakuzuki, and almost all of them will involve kicking, but usually off the back leg unless you get a little bit higher up. So when you're introducing Kumite as a drill with a partner, basically you want to be looking at three things that you want to try and achieve. And that is to develop a sense of timing, a sense of distance, and a definite acquisition of target. It's no good just punching fresh air to the side of your opponent's face. It's never going to do anything. It's like trying to shoot at a goal in football. If you keep constantly trying to miss the goal post on the outside, then you're going to get very good at it and you'll miss the goal on the outside. So target is important. And in the basics, we tend to name our target so the opponent knows what's happening. And what happens is, generally when you first start off Kumite, you'll start off either doing one-step or three-step Kumite. This is to teach distance and making length and stances, basically stealing your opponent's distance or stealing his personal space. You have to get inside his personal space if you want to punch him in the mouth, of course. So what happens is the instructor will pair them up. We'll have a little rudimentary idea or a little drill on how to achieve your distance. Usually we'll just put the hands out and then drop them, and kids tend to keep that. But then again, when they come into the ready position or kamae, they usually tend to increase that distance away. Not good, okay? So if we're doing, say, a straight drill, like Sampon Kumite, where you just take 3 steps and then the defender counters. It's a very simple drill, but it's designed for timing and distance and target. So the instructor hopefully will tell you which target you're going to attack, which you'll then inform your partner. Sometimes an instructor will ask that you not attack until your partner acknowledges that he knows where the attack is coming from. This is a little basic, but, that's the way some people do it. So step back into kamae, and usually a very basic kamae like a gidambarai or something. A little bit later on we'll go into the use of ju kamae, but right now we're stepping back in gidambarai, and we'll announce our target, okay, jodan or face attack, and then step in and hopefully try to make the face attack. So if you've got a good instructor, he's going to be really on your back if you don't make a face attack. Now, this is hard for a lot of beginners. They don't want to hurt their opponent, or they think they are going to hurt their opponent, and so they're going to hold back, which is not good. If you're not trying your best, then your partner doesn't have to try his best, and neither of you are going to be very good. He's going to go home thinking he can block, you're going to go home thinking you can punch, and you're both wrong. Okay? You must go in with full commitment, and once the instructors let you know that you can, you should go in with full speed and power to the target that you're aiming for, using your kime for control. Kime stops the technique on target. Now, that's going to be hard for beginners, but it's not unachievable. And if they're blocking, well, it's not that much of a concern, your control. What is a concern is how you control your stance at the completion of the technique, holding your balance, keeping kime, and having good senshin, which is awareness of your opponent and his ability to hurt you. So if we have a very simple 3-step, it would be jodan suki, block would be agiuki or rising block for 3 steps, and on the 3rd step you would make a counter, and hopefully you would be in the correct distance to make a good counter, stopping on target, because of course he's not going to make another move, so it would be really easy to plow him with a full power Gyakuzuki, which you don't want to do, okay? So this is really simple 3-step, or we can expand it to 5-step or whatever you. And we go back and forward on a face attack and a stomach attack, maybe on 3 kicks. All the time you should be correcting the technique, correcting the distance, correcting the block as to its effectiveness and what part of your body you're using. And blocks should never, ever look like you are pushing the attacking hand away. It should be more like you are striking the hand away. So a block is never a punch. It's always an impact where you move the attacking arm away or the attacking leg away. Generally, in the case of kicks, attacking kicks, I always tend to let my students move a little offline so we're not getting direct bone-on-bone blocking, which you shouldn't if you're blocking properly. If you're using a snap at the end of your block, the same as you do at the end of your punch, you will first make contact with a soft fleshy part and then snap into the block so that you get an impact on the incoming technique. This tends to get a little hard to teach, but if you explain it in the beginning, leaving the snap at the end of the technique, the same as you do with the punch, it'll become second nature to a lot of people. And it's much safer, it's less painful to the defender, and you achieve the same object, which is not getting hit by the attacking limb or technique. So, quite simple. This is an easy way of doing it. I'm sure we've all done it. We progress to one-step attack, which block and counter straight away. Could be the same situation. We could add more techniques like side kick, round kick, but we're only doing one step. One guy steps back, attacks, and forward. It's very unrealistic, we know, but it's training, and that's it. Now, what the objective of the training is, not just to practice the techniques. You do the same techniques in fresh air when you're doing your Kion or your Kata. But the idea would be to change the mindset so that your determination is to prosecute the technique fully, so that your opponent or your partner, in this instance, he's not your opponent yet, he's only your partner, he's your training partner, you're helping each other, he has to block. If he doesn't block, then there's consequences. The consequences, of course, is your technique goes through. And, he'll feel a little bit silly because he didn't block or he blocked at the wrong time. Blocking too early is just as bad as blocking too late. Okay? Try to get the feeling when you're blocking of not really going back, all right? More of dropping down, solidifying your stance, using your body to move the technique. Try to catch the technique while it's in motion. If we go back to Newton's law of physics, bodies in motion tend to stay in motion. They do, but they don't have to stay in a straight line. If something impacts them while they're in motion, then the vector or the trajectory is changed, and that's the whole idea behind blocking. Change the trajectory of the technique so it passes you, meanwhile leaving him open for a counter. Okay, so that's the whole thing behind a block, right? Kind of obvious, but sometimes it needs to be said. So as we go further on, you're going to find, or if you've got a decent instructor, you're going to find that they're also trying to build up power each time, not only in the attacks, but also in the blocks and counters, whilst emphasizing the use of control. So I just want to say a little bit here about, I hear a lot of people and a lot of different styles and go, we practice Hikken Izatsu, which is kill with one blow. Well, that's the theory behind it. This is pretty much a load of crap, all right? You don't practice to kill with one blow, otherwise you're going to end up with an empty dojo pretty quick and policemen banging on your door. I'm not saying it's not possible to kill with one blow, because there are instances of people being killed with a single punch. And I've looked into these and done a bit of research over the years, and most of the time people get killed with one punch. It's not in a control situation where you're sparring or anything like that. It's in a free-for-all, usually outside the pub or something like that. And it usually involves hard contact, like knuckles, to the neck area, all right, or the head area. And what will happen generally, and I think statistically, if you have a look at it, there's more fatalities happen in this instance by blows to the neck, where the circulatory vessels are situated. So you have the jugular and the vagus nerve in your neck carrying blood to and from the vein, all right? And so as soon as this hard knuckle strikes the neck, and if the person's leaning into or leaning away from it is even a little bit more problematic, because you tend to stretch and obviously expose these vessels in your neck to impact. And if that vessel gets ruptured, which you can do with a hard impact area, like a front knuckle, like if you're good at punching, you punch with your front knuckles and all your body is behind it, you're going to tear those vessels or rupture them. And of course, if you rupture your jugular or something in your neck, you're going to bleed to death. You're going to get internal bleeding at the minimum, or possibly even some kind of embolism or blood clot that's going to affect your brain. And that's basically where the one blow, one kills come in. Statistically, this is what happens. And for the majority of those instances, it's usually accidental. Any other fatalities I've researched during training or something like that have usually been down to the victim's genetics, all right? He's either got a bad heart or he's got something wrong with his heart that people didn't know about. And there's certain genetics involved. And some of these genetics are due to ethnic structures, are different. Peoples have different genetic buildups. And this is what will happen. It's just genetics that'll either give you polyps in the heart. There's a couple of instances I know where this fatalities have happened because of polyps in the vessels in the heart. And under times of extreme duress or stress, especially your blood pressure's high, you're going like crazy, Kumite, like squad training or something like that, extremely stressful and high intensity activity, and you're always on the edge, right on the edge, full of adrenaline and everything else is going, and polyps tend to fill with blood or whatever, and circulation again stops, and you get a major cardio infarction, right? Or even worse, something happens. And the few instances I've known of people passing away in training has always been during Kumite, high intensity, and they have this genetic disorder or a genetic disorder. So the Hikinizatsu part doesn't really come into it, unless you think of Hikinizatsu more of a mindset, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But let's get back to the Kumite. So hopefully when you're doing your beginner Kumite, you have started off with one step. This is how you punch, this is how you block, this is how you make a counter. Now, when I'm teaching even the very first class that people come into, I'll teach them how to make a punch. Tighten your hand this way, fingertips curled into the palm, flat-faced, exposing the first two knuckles, thumb underneath, everything in a straight line through the wrist, through the elbow, and putting your body behind the technique, right? So we practice punching. Then I'll practice blocking, okay? This is a rising block. This is, soto-uki. This is uchi-uki, inside block, outside block, all that. Then we'll let them get together, and I'll just want them to practice doing these techniques. And there's some really good drills that people have come up with over the years, and I use them a lot. I use achi-uki, which is 8-block sequence, just against punches, and then we can use against kicks. We can use different blocks, nagashi, gedan, all of these double-handed blocks, even mikazuki or uramikazuki. You're going to come across the techniques in kata, and so it's nice to point out that when you're doing kata, this is the technique we use to block against this, all right? And this is the technique we use to block against that particular thing. So it starts to come together and make a little bit of sense. And it just gets away from the old boring repetitious style. You're going to be repetitious, of course you are, because familiarity builds speed and confidence, and you get familiar with something, all right? But if you're going to get familiar with something, make sure you're doing it right. Practice doesn't make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. So if you're not doing it right, it doesn't matter how often you practice, it's still not going to be right. So we make sure that it's right. That's our job. As an instructor, we have to make sure that it's right. Now, you may find a lot of people don't want to do this, and maybe you're going to run down on students. But the satisfaction you get out of doing it right should overcome that. And it's a much better mindset for an instructor to know that he's teaching things right than to have 50 students who half of them are doing it wrong, okay? But, that's where the Western concept of making money comes in, and it's a whole different subject. We'll maybe go into it later on dojo management and another instructor's segment. Anyway, so we move on from one step, and we're going to maybe move in just to change the kamae. Now, if you're any good as an instructor, you'll show people how to make a good kamae, which basically means your guard, how you stand in a fighting stance. You stand with your hands by the sides. That's obviously not a fighting stance. That's inviting disaster or catastrophe. So what I like to do is keep my lead hand up, and my lead hand and my lead leg are usually the same. Right? Some people change so that they have the right hand forward, the left leg forward. It doesn't make much sense. Okay, so it's left leg, left hand forward, right hand a little bit back, a little bit lower. So my left hand, if I bring my fist back, it just touches my cheekbone, and then I push it out away from my body, about 1 fist distance from the elbow. Okay, my left hand should be just about, if I push it forward, it goes just below the level of the wrist of my left hand. My right hand goes just below the level of the wrist of my left hand, and it waits there. I can easily move it up, or I can move it down. The elbow position is just natural. It just lets it drop, so almost by your side. The elbows, I think, should be kept inside the body line, not elbows flared out so you look like a sick chicken. Keep the elbows inside the body line, okay? Get your weight down low as much as you can, and about the only tension that you should have in your body when you're in Jukamai is around the hips. Everything else completely relaxed. The reason for this is if you don't relax, you can't really move. You want to get as much speed as you can. And I've mentioned this before, speed is key in almost any recreation or activity, sport or art. And let's face it, Kumite these days is a sport on its own, okay? As I said, there's no style in Kumite. You can stand in the ring, and if somebody comes and punches you in the mouth, you can't say, oh, that was a Shitaru punch, or that was a Shotokan punch, or a Goju punch. It's a punch, all right? That's it. So Kumite is kind of like standalone sport, and it's a sport on its own. But in the dojo, it's not a sport. It's practice, and it's practice for what you're going to hopefully try to avoid. But if you do get it into a non-consensual situation, for example, if you're doing Kumite in a competition, then you both consent to go in the competition. There's rules, there's a referee, everybody knows what's involved. It's not really serious. A non-consensual confrontation is an entirely different thing, and you're going to have to get a whole different mindset before we move on to that. And I'm probably going to do that in the next section. So anyway, we're into the intermediate, and you can let the defenders move around if you want to, or you can just go up bit by bit. So gradually change maybe from Gidambarai, which is very formal, basic attacking position, to a Jukamai where they've got the ready guard and everything's a bit more flexible. Your ankles are loose, knees are loose. Just tension, little tension around the core so that you can move fast. All right. So this would be kind of a novice training, and you'd introduce more attacking techniques. Okay, maybe more kicks. Your distance, always keep on the distance. Don't be too close that the other person only has to reach out and bop you. And don't be too far away that you have to move in and give the other person an opportunity to nail you while you're moving in, okay? Emphasize speed, as I said. So this is where making Chirashi Gyaku, where you slip your back leg up and immediately fire forward, either on Kizami or Gyakuzuki, like thrust punch or reverse punch, or even on your kicks, all right? So just moving your fast, closing the distance fast is an art in itself. Realizing your opponent's distance is an art in itself. Making use of those distances is something that you're going to train for. Get the value in turning techniques. Realize the value in turning techniques. Practice taisabaki or body shifting, either to the side, forward or back, or spinning, all right? And just keep working on it. So these are just novice or intermediate techniques that you can use. You can also start to introduce multiple attackers, and I don't mean like 2-on-1 or something like that. They're way more advanced. But a lineup, where you have all of your students in a line and one defender, and you've got to block and attack. Now, you can have that where everybody uses the same attack, or you can have it where each one changes an attack, or you can have it where they don't know what attack is coming at all. The other thing I like to do with Kumite, and I do this early on, is Kaishippon, where we change from defense to attack very quickly. And it goes both ways. So one side will attack, the other side will attack back, and then immediately we get an attack back with a counter involved. So it just goes back and forwards. It's a really useful drill to switch from defense to offense really quickly, which is basically what you'd have to do in an outside confrontation. If you got attacked, you better make sure that your defense is adequate and you can switch straight away to offense. And then this is where the mindset, not so much the technique, but the mindset of Hikkinizatsu would come in. And as I say, I'll explain that a little bit later. So that's it for now. Hopefully you're doing Kumite. Try to keep all those points in mind, and there's many, many others. If you feel like I've missed any, just let me know. As always, any questions, queries, or comments, just let me know. Okay? Talk to you later.